Greetings, everyone. Hi, my name is Charlie Cowan. I'm the business administrator at Sequoia Valley School District. Had some technical difficulties again last night. Clearly not my strength that the audio did not work for the board meeting. So I do want to make sure that we post the budget presentation for the community to be able to view should they desire. So I will share my screen at this time and quickly go over the presentation. I'll try to summarize some of the comments made by the Board of Education. But again, this is in place of the board recording that did not have any audio for last evening. So let me share my screen at this time. We will do is go through the slideshow. So for the board meeting last evening, we discussed some of the areas of the budget: salaries, benefits, debt service, and also touched on our state aid revenues. Talked about them primarily because the governor had released her executive proposal on January 16th, the date of our last budget meeting. So wanted to give some input regarding that information at tonight's meeting. So here's the budget that was presented at the January 16th meeting, total of $26,878,000. The bottom are the revenues. The items that are highlighted are what will be discussed. I'll review quickly debt service, the salaries and benefits for the school district. And then again, as I mentioned, talk about state aid. You can see the three items on the expenditure side: the salaries, benefits, and debt service. They make up approximately 19 million of a $26.8 million budget. So the vast majority of the budget is in our personnel and debt service. And the one item that we are not touching on tonight, the BOE services, is another fairly significant amount that we will discuss at a later meeting. This slide is a line item of each of the areas that are being discussed. This has been provided to the Board of Education for the entire budget for 24-25 that's being proposed. Along with the proposed budget highlighted in yellow, you can see that I've also provided 5 years of actual expenditures and our budget for the current year. So the three areas that we're talking about tonight: the debt service, the employee benefits, and the salary that you see here, those are the line items within our budget that make up those totals of $3 million, $6 million, and $9.9 million. Quickly go through our debt service. Our debt service is really made up of a couple of pieces. We each year do issue a bond anticipation note that we have to pay off at the conclusion of the year. And it is for our school buses. For 24-25, our total payment for the bond anticipation note will be a $250,000 principal payment and a $36,000 interest payment, so $286,000. Our bond anticipation note today is $875,000. With that $250,000 that we're paying off, and we will present a referendum for $350,000 to buy 2 additional buses in the 24-25 year. And the ban at that point in time would be the $975,000 that you see on the far right-hand side. We also do have a $10,785,000 ban, which is again short-term or temporary financing for our current capital project. The plan is to issue serial bonds for that in June of this year, and that will be captured as long-term debt in 24-25. So the bond anticipation note or short-term debt is the $286,000 that you see highlighted in yellow there. The serial bond or long-term debt, it consists of 3 different projects, 2 of them that have been in place for a number of years. One that was approved in 2007. You can see the total $122,000. The one approved in 2016, $1,557,000. And again, that $10,785,000 that we will issue serial bonds for in June of this year has an estimated debt payment of $1,183,000 in 24-25. So the total long-term debt of $2,863,000. The 2 items up above at the top are obviously set in stone. This is the last year. 24-25 will be the last year for the 2007 project. The 2016 will continue on for a number of years. And in 24-25 would be the first year of the $10.785 million project that was approved in 2021. So the estimate is based on information that was received from our financial advisors, Bernie Donegan's office. And in the red box, you can see the 2025 year, the $210,000 principal and $973,000 interest. Those were estimates that were provided basically a year ago, and we will be meeting on Friday of this week. So that's February 2nd to go over an update of what those numbers will be. Numbers may change a little bit, but generally what happens with our debt service also will impact our state aid. So it will not have a significant impact on the overall budget, regardless of those numbers changing. That's debt service. We'll now move into our personnel and our benefit or our salaries and wages for our staff. A lot of information on this schedule. As you can see, the codes that make up all of our salaries from the clerk to the Board of Education in 1040, 160 down to our transportation department, 5510, 160, and all of the codes in between. The FTEs for each of the codes is highlighted. The orange are our administrative or individuals that are not part of a union contract. The green are our SRP or non-instructional staff, and the blue are our teaching staff. You can see at the bottom there, the total administration, 9 individuals. Their teachers are 97.67 full-time equivalents, and our SRP staff represent 64 individual people. So the total of all of their salaries, applying, the contracts that are in place and estimates for those that are not, our SRP contract does expire June 30th of 2024. So we're using some estimates for next year. The total for all of those individuals, you can see at the bottom, amount per schedule is about $10,052,000. That $10,052,000 is tied to our people. There's also some overtime included in there. The single biggest overtime piece is for our transportation department, and that really represents the cost for field trips, sports runs, all those runs that are not part of their regular daily route that are captured in their salaries. So with that, we then add certain items. We will add, we have insurance buyouts for individuals. There's grad hours, there's different things. So 182,000 gets added. The two biggest items there, single biggest item is, you can see 2110, 140. We will budget $110,000 for substitute teachers in 24-25. That number's been set at 90,000 for a number of years. However, we've increased the daily reimbursement rate the daily rate for our substitutes, and the $110,000 more accurately reflects what we are paying our substitute teachers over the course of a year. And up above that, a few lines, 2010, 150, we also include $20,000 of summer curriculum. Teachers that come in the summer to prepare curriculum for their classes are paid, and we allocate $20,000 for that. The next column is the highlighted in yellow. What we subtract, the $240,000, are grants from the federal government that have occurred each year and are recurring. They are for our Title I program, as well as our IDEA special education programs. And we've set that amount at $240,000 each year. Those are some salaries of teachers that are to provide those Title I services or special education services that are paid outside of the general fund. So those are removed from the general fund budget. The next column, where there are zeros under the pandemic funding, is shown here only because there had been amounts that were allocated to the federal funding from the pandemic in past years. That goes away at the end of this 23-24 school year, and that is now being captured in the general fund. And we've talked about that several meetings in the past. We've got Title I teachers, we've got a math AIS teacher, we've got an elementary guidance teacher that had previously been captured and funded outside of the general fund that at this point in time are reflected in the general fund. Adding all of that up, you get a total of $9,994,454. You compare that to last year's total in the budget of $9,538,000. We have an increase of about 4.78%. And again, you can see the FTEs that we have for each of the different groups below here. 9 administration, which includes superintendent, principals, business administrator, supervisors of transportation and building and grounds, as well as the board clerk, and 97 teachers, and 64 SRP or non-instructional staff members. That is the information on our salaries for the 24-25 year at this point in time. Now go into benefits. So benefits are pretty straightforward. You know, we have contributions that as an employer we need to make to the retirement systems for our certified staff that are members of the teachers retirement system. The contribution rate for 24-25, I've used an estimate of 10%. They've given us a range of 9.75 to 10.25%. Typically, that's pretty much split down the middle. So the 10% that I'm using for 24-25 is based on the estimates that they've given us. So all that I really do is I take the salaries that are included in the budget that would be eligible for contributions to the teachers retirement system, basically our staff, our substitutes, our administration that is part of that are certified employees, and anything else that would possibly be roles that are filled by our instructional staff. Add that up, apply the 10% contribution rate, and come up to about $800,000. You can see that I've proposed including in the budget $845,000 for a contribution to TRS. You know, a little bit more than what I've calculated, but when we build a budget that says we're going to use $827,000 of fund balance, I want to try to have a little bit of room in our budget to be able to restore some of that fund balance each year. And this is one of those areas in all of our employee benefits codes are areas where I try to have a little extra money to return back into our fund balance. So those are the teachers under the TRS system. ERS are our non-instructional or non-certified staff. And again, basically just take all of our salaries for the year and then apply the proposed or the estimated contribution rate. And for our non-instructional group, it isn't a single rate. It depends upon the time that they entered the retirement system. And going into 24-25, ERS still had that we had a tier 3 or 2 employee, some tier 3 employees, tier 4, tier 5, and tier 6. So they provided those rates for us. And you can see that the rates have increased in recent years from 22-23. They've gone up this year and are increasing again in 24-25. So the average rate has gone from 12.56% this year to 14.5% next year. Applying that 14.5% to the total salaries gives us about $375,000. $400,000 is proposed to be budgeted to the ERS contribution line for 24-25. A pretty significant increase, but when you look at what the contribution rate average went up from 12.56 to 14.51, that increase is nearly 15%, and that is the reason for this significant increase to that line item. Next, payroll taxes. We make our contribution to Social Security and Medicare benefits. Take all of our salaries, apply that 7.65%. That comes out to a little over $800,000. $825,000 is the proposed amount in the budget for 24-25. And workers' compensation, we've changed our carriers for workers' compensation this year, and we've got a 3-year guaranteed rate. So the $55,000 that was budgeted this year will be budgeted for 24-25 and again in 25-26. The last piece of employee benefits is the health insurance, health and dental insurance. And really the idea here is to capture what we pay as the employer, estimate what the rate increase will be for 24-25, and then plug in any add-ons that might occur due to new hires, et cetera. So what I've done is I've taken one of the recent months of our total employees, our total insurance bills. Total premium that we paid, $355,000 during the month. Of that amount, $290,000 was the employer share. So I take that $290,000, estimating a 7% increase to our health insurance in 24-25, then take that times 12 to annualize it. It looks like we'd have about a $3,733,000 bill for our health and dental insurance in 24-25. Then also add an amount should we hire any new staff. We have at least one retiree. When the retiree leaves us, we continue to carry some benefits for them. So we have to add some additional amounts for anticipated new staff. We also have life insurance cost, and we also contribute $100 to each of our instructional staff towards their flex plan as part of their contract. Those items get added in. $3,779,000. You can see a budget of $3,950,000 for 24-25. So the increase 5.68% is less than the anticipated 7% increase to our premiums, though it is more than what I expect our total cost to be. It's actually shrinking that little bit of fund balance that amount that we would be able to add to fund balance as we are increasing it by less than, you can see the total growth is less than the 7%. And I want to touch on the 7%. That is a number that I had projected early back in October, actually. We recently had a meeting with our consultants for the Health Insurance Consortium. Their initial proposal is to increase our rates by 9%. I did not anticipate that. I still expect that it will be a 7% increase or somewhere in that range. In recent years, it's been 5 to 5.5%. But the consultants do realize that, and the numbers do show that we do need to increase rates greater than 5 to 5.5% to maintain the solvency or the financial strength of the consortium. So those are the employee benefits. Again, I want to talk briefly about the state aid. Numbers were provided by the governor on January 16th around 5 o'clock, so I did not have time to really look at them ahead of that meeting. So here is the proposal from the governor. And up top is the anticipated aid that we will be receiving this year in 23-24. And then on the bottom is the projected aid as proposed by the governor in her executive budget. I have highlighted in here or circled in red here our foundation aid. Now, foundation aid is the aid that is provided to school districts annually to help them with their operating expenses. We receive several other kinds of aid. We receive BOCES aid. We receive special education aid in the way of high cost and private aid, private excess cost aid. We receive transportation. We receive building aid. The bigger items there, the BOCES, the special education, the transportation, and the building aid are all the result of expenditures that have been incurred by the school district. The foundation aid is kind of the base aid that is supposed to assist us with our operating expenses from year to year. You can see that it's actually a decrease in 24-25 based on the governor's proposal. And that is something that I truly did not anticipate when I built the budget back in October. And I'll show on the next couple of slides, that my anticipated number for state aid is $15.5 million, or was $15.5 million when this was originally built. The governor's number, 15 million or 14,565,000. We take away the universal pre-K aid, her number would be $14.3 million. So significantly less than the $15.5 million that I had anticipated and am at this point basing a budget on for 24-25. So what does that mean? Again, looking at the aid, last couple of years of our foundation aid. We received $9,100,000 in 22-23, $9,433,000 in 24-25, and now a decline in 24-25. Highlighted in yellow are aids that are estimates that can change, but probably not too significantly. And then lastly, down at the bottom, the building aid for the new debt service that's coming on is not yet built into the governor's number. But if I take the governor's numbers and then add in that building aid, I come to a total of about $15 million, where I had anticipated $15,500,000. Now, my anticipation was that we would receive a 3% increase on our foundation aid. Had we received that 3% increase, our foundation aid for this year would have been around $9.7 million, so about $400,000 higher than what the governor has provided to us. And that is something that we're already looking at a very difficult budget year for 24-25. And if the governor's number holds true, that's only going to make things that much more difficult. So on the next slide, again, this is where we stand at this point in time, with still anticipating $15.5 million of state aid. This was reviewed at the last board meeting. If we stay at the tax cap, we still have a gap of about $950,000. If we exceed the tax cap, and that was a proposal that was recommended, and that would be to maintain the programs that were added as part of the pandemic, which included a Title I program in the middle school, a math AIS program, and an elementary guidance counselor. If we were to levy the 5.5% to preserve those programs, we would still have a gap of about $659,000. A significant gap, but one that there are some other areas that we're seeing some relief in. Special education is one of those areas that I think we would be able to meet that number and generally preserve the programs that we have. Unfortunately, with the governor's number, these gaps are even greater. So this next slide anticipates the reduction in state aid to closer to what the governor has proposed. And with that in place, if we were to stay at the tax cap at the current time, our gap would be close to the $1.3 million number. If we go to the 5.5%, we're still looking at approximately $1 million gap. And those numbers are very, very difficult to reconcile to with what I am able to recommend at this point in time. I am optimistic or hopeful that some of the proposal from the governor will be restored. However, I think that we need to prepare ourselves for this being an even more difficult budget than what had been anticipated only 2 weeks ago, ahead of seeing the numbers from the governor. That is generally my presentation for tonight, that was provided to the Board of Education. There were some discussions by the Board of Education, mostly that they would be in support of exceeding the tax cap, but need to fully understand what the impact is if we are unable to do so. And so that information is what we will be providing over the next few board meetings. The information that has been provided, and I understand this, and reflected on it overnight, kind of, is that this is a lot of numbers that don't really make a lot of sense to people that don't spend their day looking at them as I do. And I apologize for that. I will attempt to make the presentations more user-friendly and really talk about, what impacts maintaining programs, state aid cuts will have for the community and for the school district at future meetings. With that, I'm going to sign off at this point in time. I will stop sharing the screen, and I thank you for your time. Again, apologize that I was unable to have the audio working last evening for the entire board meeting. And we will get that rectified for the future board meeting. Thank you for your time again and have a good day. Bye now.